The saloon girl saved a preacher's life. Then the town branded her a devil's bride. The small town, quiet for most of the day, was slowly coming alive. Children ran along the boardwalks, laughing and chasing one another, while shopkeepers started closing their shutters, preparing for another long night. In the center of town stood the only saloon, a weathered wooden building with a swinging door that creaked with every movement. Its sign, painted long ago, read the Golden Spur. Inside, the air was thick with smoke, the scent of whiskey, and the low hum of conversation. Behind the counter stood Leela, her dark hair tied back with a faded ribbon. She was a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Life in Blackwater Creek had been hard, and Leela had learned early that strength and quick thinking were her best allies. She had been working at the Golden Spur for several years, serving drinks, calming quarrels, and keeping an eye on the troublemakers who drifted through town. Though some townsfolk whispered about her past and the life she led, Leela paid little attention. She cared about survival, and sometimes that meant living in the shadows while keeping her head high. It was just after supper when the sound of hooves clattering against the wooden planks announced the arrival of a stranger. A tall man, dressed modestly in a black coat and a wide-brimmed hat, dismounted from his horse. Dust clung to his boots and his eyes were tired, carrying the weight of long miles traveled. He glanced at the saloon and hesitated, as if unsure whether he should enter. Leela noticed him immediately. She had seen many travelers come and go, each with their own stories, but there was something different about this man. His movements were careful, his gaze steady, and there was a quiet kindness in the way he observed the room. "Evening, stranger," Leela called, wiping her hands on a rag. Her voice was firm but polite, a little wary. She had learned to greet everyone whether they meant trouble or not. The man removed his hat with a slight bow. "Evening," he replied softly. His voice was calm and gentle, carrying a quiet authority. "I'm Samuel, I'm just passing through." Leela nodded, offering him a small smile. "Name S. Leela, first time in Blackwater Creek." "Yes," Samuel said. "I travel a lot, spreading my sermons and helping wherever I can." "But this town," he paused, glancing around the dimly lit saloon, "it seems a little different." Leela chuckled lightly. "Different is one word for it. Small towns have their ways." She motioned for him to sit on one of the stools near the bar. "What'll it be? Coffee? Whiskey?" "Don't worry, I won't judge." Her eyes twinkled with amusement. Samuel shook his head politely. "Water will do, thank you, and perhaps some bread if you have it." As Leela served him, a commotion started at the far end of the room. A few rough-looking men, their hats pulled low over their eyes, were arguing over a card game. Voices rose, threats were muttered, and a glass smashed on the wooden floor. Leela's stomach tightened. She knew how quickly things could spiral out of control in her saloon. Trouble had a way of finding its way through the swinging doors, and tonight seemed like it had chosen her place. Samuel, unaware of the danger, continued sipping his water, watching the scene unfold with quiet concern. Leela moved closer to the bar, keeping one eye on the men and the other on her new guest. Her instincts screamed that something was about to happen. Then, in a sudden, sharp motion, one of the men drew a gun. The room went silent for a heartbeat, everyone frozen as the danger became real. Samuel instinctively stepped forward, trying to intervene. "Gentlemen, please, there's no need for this," he said, his voice steady and commanding but not harsh. He wasn't used to threats of violence, and yet something inside him demanded he act. Before he could react further, Leela lunged. Without a second thought, she threw herself between Samuel and the man with the gun. The weapon fired. The bullet grazed her shoulder and pain shot through her arm, but she didn't falter. Her eyes were fierce, her body determined to shield the preacher from harm. The saloon erupted into chaos, chairs overturned, and patrons ducked for cover, but Leela held her ground. "Get him out," she shouted to Samuel, her voice cutting through the panic. "Go now," Samuel didn't hesitate. He grabbed a chair to block the swinging door, helping others to safety while keeping his eyes on Leela. She was bleeding, but she was still standing. The gunman, startled by her bravery, dropped the weapon and ran. The room fell silent except for the heavy breathing of the patrons and the soft groan of Leela as she pressed a cloth to her shoulder. Samuel hurried to her side, kneeling carefully. "You've saved my life," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "You could have been seriously hurt or worse." Leela tried to smile, brushing away the concern in his eyes. "I'm fine," she said, though the truth was that the pain was sharp and deep. "You didn't deserve this." Someone had to act. The townsfolk, who had been hiding behind tables and under chairs, began to emerge slowly, murmuring among themselves. Many stared at Leela in awe, realizing what she had done. Some clapped timidly, while others whispered that she was fearless or foolish. Leela ignored it all, focusing instead on tending to herself and making sure Samuel was safe. Once the immediate danger had passed, Samuel helped her to a chair. Leela's face was pale, but her eyes were alive, sharp, and unbroken. He gently inspected her wound, marveling at her strength. "You didn't just save me," he said quietly. "You risked everything for a stranger. That is bravery in its purest form." Leela shook her head, though a small smile flickered across her lips. "I'm used to taking risks," she said simply. "Life here, it teaches you fast. You don't have the luxury of hesitation." Samuel's eyes softened as he looked at her. "I've seen courage in many forms," he said, "but yours is something extraordinary." For the first time that evening, the tension in Leela's chest eased. She realized that not everyone in Blackwater Creek would judge her. Not everyone would see her only as a saloon girl. Some could see her for who she truly was, strong, brave, and capable of kindness even in the face of danger. As the night wore on, Leela cleaned up the mess, patched her own wound as best she could, and listened to Samuel tell stories of his travels. He spoke of small towns and big cities, of people who struggled and triumphed, and of the power of faith and hope. Leela, who had spent most of her life focused on survival, found herself drawn to his words. They were simple, but they carried a weight she had not expected. By the time the moon had risen high over Blackwater Creek, the saloon was quiet once more. The fire in the hearth cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the town slept unaware of the events that had unfolded. Samuel stood to leave, offering Leela a respectful nod. "I owe you my life," he said. "Perhaps we will meet again under calmer skies." Leela watched him leave, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She had faced danger, protected another, and survived. And in that small, fleeting moment, she felt something new: connection, respect, and perhaps the start of something that could change her life forever. The night was still, the saloon quiet except for the crackle of the fire, and Leela sat back, allowing herself a moment of rest. In Blackwater Creek, life was never easy, but for the first time she felt the promise of something beyond mere survival, something stronger. After that night in the saloon, life in Blackwater Creek slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but for Leela, nothing felt quite the same. The memory of the gunshot, the rush of fear, and the way she had instinctively protected Samuel lingered in her mind. She found herself thinking about him often, wondering about the man who traveled from town to town, spreading words of hope, yet had a calm strength that seemed to settle everything around him. There was something different about him, something she couldn't quite explain. For the first time in years, Leela allowed herself to imagine a life beyond the saloon. She had always believed that her world was small, defined by the dusty streets of Blackwater Creek and the long hours behind the bar. But Samuel's presence had shown her that there were people who saw her not as a saloon girl, but as a person of courage, capable of kindness and bravery. A few days later, Samuel returned. Leela had not expected it, and yet when she saw his familiar figure walking up the street, her heart gave a small, unexpected leap. He approached the saloon with a careful smile, carrying a small satchel over his shoulder. "Good morning, Leela," he said softly, tipping his hat. "I hope I'm not intruding." Leela shook her head, feeling an unfamiliar warmth at his polite tone. "Not at all," she replied. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon." "I promised I would," Samuel said. "After what you did, I wanted to make sure you were all right." Leela waved off the concern, though she secretly appreciated it. "I'm fine, just a scratch, really." She pointed to the cloth wrapped around her shoulder. "Besides, it wasn't your life that was at risk. You should be worried about yourself." Samuel smiled gently. "I was worried about you, though. That's what matters." They sat together for a while, sharing a quiet moment. The saloon was nearly empty in the morning, and the sunlight streamed through the windows, making the dust particles float like tiny stars. Samuel spoke of the towns he had visited, the people he had helped, and the lessons he had learned along the way. Leela listened, fascinated. She had spent much of her life focused on surviving, but Samuel's words painted a different picture. A world where courage and kindness could make a difference, where people could choose to be better, even in difficult circumstances. Over the next few weeks, Samuel became a regular visitor. Sometimes he stopped by to rest and refresh before continuing his journey. Other times he lingered, helping Leela with small repairs in the saloon or sharing simple meals. Slowly, a bond began to form between them. It was not a romantic bond, not yet, but a connection built on respect, understanding, and the shared memory of that dangerous night. The town, however, did not look upon their friendship kindly. Small towns have long memories, and Blackwater Creek was no different. Whispers began to spread, soft at first but growing louder over time. People watched Leela with suspicion, their eyes following her wherever she went. "The preacher's friend," they muttered behind their hands. "Or maybe worse, the devil's bride," some said, shaking their heads in disapproval. At first, Leela ignored them. She had dealt with judgment before. She had learned early that people were often cruel when they did not understand, and she had no patience for their gossip. But the whispers continued, and soon Samuel began to notice the way the townspeople looked at her. One afternoon, as they walked through the dusty streets after a morning at the saloon, Samuel stopped her gently. "Layla," he said softly, "don't let their words hurt you. You know who you are." "I know," she replied, though her voice held a trace of sadness. "But it is hard sometimes. People can be cruel even when they should be thankful." Samuel placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "They will see the truth eventually." Courage and kindness cannot remain hidden forever. Despite his reassurance, Leela felt the weight of the town's judgment. The baker refused to serve her bread without payment in advance. Children ran away when she approached, frightened by the rumors their parents had whispered. The whispers even reached the saloon's regular patrons, who began keeping their distance. Leela tried to ignore it, focusing on her work and the quiet companionship of Samuel, but the sting of rejection was difficult to shake. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Samuel suggested they take a walk outside the town limits. Leela agreed, grateful for a chance to escape the prying eyes and judgmental whispers. They walked along the narrow dirt path leading to the edge of the hills, the wind carrying the scent of wildflowers and dry grass. For the first time in weeks, Leela felt a sense of freedom, a momentary escape from the weight of the town's opinion. "Do you ever wonder," Samuel asked quietly, "why people fear what they do not understand?" Leela thought about it. "I think it's easier for them to judge than to see the truth. Fear makes people blind." Samuel nodded. "Yes, but fear can also be overcome. Sometimes it takes courage to show them what is real." Leela smiled, feeling a spark of hope. Then maybe they will see it one day. Their walks became a routine. They spoke about everything, the hardships of life, the small joys, the beauty of nature, and the importance of helping others. Leela shared stories of her childhood, of the hardships she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. Samuel listened, never judging, always encouraging. In his presence, Leela felt a sense of calm she had never known. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that life could be more than survival, that she could be more than the rumors suggested. Yet even as their bond deepened, the town's suspicion grew. Rumors reached the ears of the preacher's supporters, who began questioning his judgment. "Why does he spend so much time with that saloon girl?" they asked one another. "Can a man of God associate with someone like her and remain pure?" Samuel faced the criticism with quiet strength. He continued his work, preaching to the town, helping those in need and supporting Leela. He knew that the truth of her character was stronger than any rumor, and he refused to let the town's fear dictate his actions. But the whispers were not the only challenge. One day, a traveler arrived in Blackwater Creek, a man with a loud voice and a quick temper. He spread lies about Leela, claiming that she had caused trouble in other towns. His words were venomous, designed to provoke anger and distrust. Many townspeople, eager to believe the worst, began treating Leela with open hostility. Some refused to serve her in their shops, others warned their children to stay away. Even the sheriff, a normally fair man, gave her a wary glance. Leela felt the sting of it all, but Samuel remained by her side. "Do not let them take your spirit," he told her gently. "You have done nothing wrong. Your heart is strong and your courage speaks for itself." One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, casting long shadows across the town, Leela and Samuel sat outside the saloon. The air was cool, and the sky was painted in brilliant shades of orange and purple. Leela leaned back, taking a deep breath. "I never expected my life to be like this," she said softly. "Danger, judgment, whispers, and yet I have found something I never thought I would, a friend who sees me for who I am." Samuel smiled. "Sometimes the hardest lives reveal the strongest hearts. You have taught me as much as I have taught you, Leela." She looked at him, feeling a warmth in her chest. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps, even in a town full of judgment and fear, goodness and courage could shine through. That night, as Leela closed the saloon and prepared for bed, she thought about the journey ahead. The town might continue to judge her, and life would remain difficult, but she had Samuel by her side. A reminder that courage, kindness, and truth could withstand even the harshest of whispers. And in her heart, she knew that she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Something like hope. The days in Blackwater Creek grew longer, and the sun seemed to linger over the dusty streets, casting sharp shadows across the town. Leela went about her work at the Golden Spur, serving drinks and cleaning tables, but the whispers and sideways glances never stopped. Every step she took was measured, every smile carefully controlled. She had learned to live with judgment, but now it seemed that the town's suspicion had grown heavier, almost like a cloud hanging over her head. Samuel continued to visit, always bringing a sense of calm to her life. They spent mornings walking along the outskirts of town, talking about faith, courage, and the small wonders of life. But with every friendly gesture, every kind word exchanged, the town's disapproval seemed to deepen. Rumors spread faster than the wind through the streets. Leela had become the devil's bride, the woman who had saved a preacher's life yet somehow threatened the morals of Blackwater Creek. One afternoon, as Leela swept the saloon floor, a group of townsfolk entered, their faces stern. The leader, a tall man with a weathered face named Mr. Hargrove, stepped forward. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but firm. Leela straightened, trying to keep her composure. "About what?" she asked. "It's about your friendship with the preacher," he said. "People are talking, Leela. They say it's improper. We can't have the preacher's reputation ruined because of someone like you." Leela's hands clenched around the broom. "Someone like me? I risked my life to save his," she said, her voice steady but tinged with frustration. "And this is how the town thanks me." Mr. Hargrove's expression softened slightly, but he remained firm. We only want what's best for the town and for Samuel. You must understand that people fear what they don't know." Leela shook her head. "I don't care about their fear. I care about what is right, and protecting Samuel was right, no matter what anyone thinks." The men muttered among themselves and left, but their words lingered in Leela's mind. She had expected judgment, but the way it seemed to grow heavier every day unsettled her. Even some of her regular patrons began avoiding her, whispering as they walked by. For the first time, she felt a twinge of doubt. Could she really survive in a town that refused to see her as she was? That evening, Samuel arrived at the saloon as the sun dipped below the hills. His eyes were filled with concern as he noticed Leela's troubled expression. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "I'm fine," she said quickly, forcing a smile. "It's just the town. They don't understand me." Samuel nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Fear makes people cruel, Leela, but we cannot let them dictate our actions or our hearts." She sighed, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness at his words. "I just wish they could see me for who I really am, not the rumors they spread." Samuel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "They will see eventually, but in the meantime we must be patient. Courage and truth have their own way of shining through." The next few days brought no relief. The whispers grew louder, and a few townspeople began to openly challenge Leela. They accused her of leading Samuel astray, of corrupting his teachings, and of bringing trouble into the town. Leela tried to ignore it, focusing on her work and on Samuel's quiet encouragement, but the weight of the judgment was growing heavier. One afternoon, as she served drinks, a young girl approached, her eyes wide with fear. "Miss Leela," the girl whispered, "my mother says you're evil. She says you're the devil's bride." Leela knelt down to the girl's level, taking her small hands gently. "I'm not evil, sweetie," she said softly. "I help people when they need it. Sometimes people say things they don't understand. Don't believe everything you hear." The girl looked uncertain but nodded slowly, and Leela felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps not everyone in the town had been consumed by fear and judgment. But not all encounters were so gentle. One evening, as the saloon was closing, a group of men cornered Leela outside. "We've had enough of your influence over the preacher," one of them growled. "You're causing trouble in our town, and we won't allow it any longer." Leela's heart raced, but she refused to show fear. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said firmly. "I only protect people when they are in danger, that's all." The men laughed harshly, their voices echoing through the empty streets. "That's not how the town sees it," another said. "People like you don't belong here." Before the situation could escalate further, Samuel arrived, walking quickly toward them. His presence was calm but commanding. "Leave her alone," he said, his voice steady. "She has done nothing but show courage and kindness. If you cannot see that, then you are blind to what is right." The men hesitated, muttering under their breath before finally walking away. Samuel turned to Leela, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right?" he asked. Leela nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "I will be," she said. "But it never ends, does it?" Samuel shook his head. "No, but we will face it together. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting in spite of it." Days turned into weeks, and Leela continued to face the town's judgment. But with Samuel's support, she began to stand taller, walk with more confidence, and refuse to be defined by the whispers. She realized that true strength came not from avoiding conflict, but from facing it head-on, with honesty and courage. One morning, a traveling preacher visited Blackwater Creek. He had heard of Samuel's work and came to see him. When he met Leela, he was surprised by her bravery and her kindness. "I have heard the town's whispers," he said gently, "but I see the truth. You are a woman of courage and your heart is strong." Leela felt a sense of validation she had never experienced before. "Thank you," she said softly. "It means a lot to hear that someone sees me for who I really am." Samuel smiled at her quietly. "I have always known it," he said. "The truth cannot be hidden forever." Despite small victories like this, the town's judgment remained. Leela learned to navigate the hostility with grace, refusing to respond with anger or fear. She focused on her work, on helping those who needed it, and on the bond she shared with Samuel. Their friendship grew stronger, built on mutual respect, trust, and the memory of the night when Leela had saved his life. One evening, as they walked together along the hills outside town, Samuel spoke softly. "The town may never fully understand you," he said, "but that does not matter. What matters is who you are and the difference you make in the lives around you." Leela looked at him, feeling a warmth in her chest. "Sometimes I wonder if it will ever change," she said. "If the town will see me differently." Samuel took her hand gently. "Change takes time, Leela, but courage and kindness are never wasted. You have already made a difference, and one day they will see it too." As the sun set behind the hills, casting long shadows across the town, Leela felt a sense of determination. She would not allow fear or judgment to define her. She had faced danger, saved a life, and stood strong in the face of hostility. Whatever the town thought or whispered, she knew her own heart, and that was enough. For the first time, Leela felt a quiet confidence that no whisper, no rumor, and no fear could shake. She was strong, brave, and capable of standing tall, no matter what challenges lay ahead. And with Samuel by her side, she knew that she could face anything, because courage, once found, cannot be taken away. The night was unusually still over Blackwater Creek. A cool wind blew through the empty streets, carrying the scent of pine and dry dust. Leela closed the saloon later than usual, sweeping the floor one last time and wiping down the counter. Her shoulder still ached faintly from the old gunshot wound, a dull reminder of that first night when she had saved Samuel's life. Yet, despite the pain and the town's growing suspicion, she felt a quiet determination inside her, a sense that she was ready for whatever challenge came next. Samuel had been visiting the town more frequently, preaching and helping anyone in need. His calm presence had started to bring hope to some of the townspeople, though others remained skeptical, whispering that he was too friendly with a saloon girl. But Samuel paid little attention to the rumors. He believed in truth, in courage, and in the ability of people like Leela to make the world a better place. It was a late afternoon when Leela noticed smoke curling over the hills at the edge of town. At first she thought it might be a controlled fire, perhaps a farmer burning weeds. But as the smoke thickened and blackened the sky, her stomach tightened. She recognized the smell immediately, smoke from burning wood, too strong and sharp to be ordinary. Her eyes widened with alarm as she realized where the smoke was coming from. The town's small church, Samuel's modest place of worship, was on fire. People were screaming in the streets as flames leapt from the wooden roof, sending sparks into the night sky. Samuel was inside, helping prepare for the evening service when the fire began. Leela's heart pounded. She knew she had to act, no matter the danger. Without a second thought, she dashed toward the church, her boots kicking up dust as she ran. "Samuel," she shouted, her voice cutting through the crackling of flames. "Samuel, get out!" The preacher's voice echoed weakly from inside. "I'm trapped. The flames, they're blocking the doors." Leela didn't hesitate. Her mind raced as she looked for a way inside. The main entrance was engulfed in flames, but a side window offered a chance. Without thinking about her own safety, she climbed, breaking the glass and swinging herself inside. The heat hit her immediately, scorching her skin and making it hard to breathe. Smoke filled her lungs, stinging her eyes, but she pressed forward, determined to reach Samuel. Inside, the church was a chaos of fire and falling beams. Samuel was near the altar, coughing and trying to move debris blocking the exit. When he saw Leela, his eyes widened in disbelief and relief. "Leela, you shouldn't. No time for that," she shouted, grabbing his arm. "We have to go." Together, they began moving toward the side exit, dodging falling pieces of wood and weaving through the thick smoke. Leela felt the heat searing her arms and ash fell like snow around them. But she kept moving, driven by a courage stronger than fear. She had saved Samuel once before, and she would do it again. Outside, the townspeople had gathered at a safe distance, some too afraid to help, others frozen in shock. They watched in silence as Leela emerged from the smoke, carrying Samuel over her shoulder for a brief moment before helping him to the ground. His eyes were wide, filled with gratitude and awe, while hers were bloodshot and wet from the smoke. "Are you all right?" Samuel asked once they were at a safe distance, his voice shaking. Leela nodded, though she was coughing and exhausted. "I'm fine." "You're safe, and that's what matters." The fire consumed the church rapidly, flames leaping into the sky, casting the town in an eerie orange glow. Leela and Samuel stood side by side, watching as the building that had once been a source of comfort and peace was reduced to smoldering ruins. For a long moment the town was silent. No one spoke. Then, one by one, whispers began to circulate. "She saved him. She risked her life again." Even those who had doubted Leela before could not ignore what they had just witnessed. She had acted without hesitation, placing herself in mortal danger to save someone else. And not just anyone, Samuel, a man who had inspired them, a man of faith, a man whose life had been threatened by forces they didn't even understand. Some townsfolk approached cautiously, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and newfound respect. "Leila, you," one man stammered. We didn't understand. You are brave more than anyone could imagine." Leela's voice was steady, though tired. "I only did what was right. Samuel needed help, and I couldn't let him be hurt." Samuel stepped forward, his voice carrying through the smoky air. "Everyone look at her. She risked everything to save me. This is courage, this is kindness, and this is the heart of a hero. Let us not judge but learn from her example." Slowly, the mood of the crowd began to shift. The fear and suspicion that had dominated the town's whispers started to crumble under the weight of truth. People who had once doubted Leela could not deny what they had just seen. Courage could not be hidden, and bravery could not be ignored. That night, as the town gathered near the ruins of the church, Leela and Samuel stood together, surrounded by those who were beginning to see them differently. Some still whispered behind hands, unsure what to make of her, but many more looked with respect and admiration. They had witnessed a truth that could not be denied, a young woman who, despite judgment and fear, had acted with selfless courage. Samuel turned to Leela, his eyes soft with gratitude. "You've done more than save me tonight," he said. "You've shown the town what true bravery looks like. You've shown them that courage cannot be measured by words, only by actions." Leela shook her head, still catching her breath. "I only did what I had to. It wasn't about being brave, it was about doing the right thing." He smiled gently. "That is what makes it bravery, Leela. To act rightly when fear surrounds you, that is courage." As the night wore on, volunteers from the town began clearing debris and salvaging what they could. Leela stayed nearby, exhausted but proud. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of acceptance, a glimmer of hope that maybe the town could see her for who she really was. Even so, Leela knew that not everyone would change their minds immediately. There would always be those who whispered, those who judged, those who feared what they did not understand. But now, there was proof of her character that could not be ignored. A night when she risked everything to save another. A night when courage triumphed over fear. As Samuel and Leela walked back to the saloon under the starlit sky, the town quiet once more, they spoke of the future. "The town may take time to understand," Samuel said, "but your actions tonight have begun to change hearts." Leela nodded, feeling the weight of exhaustion and relief mingling together. "I hope so," she said softly. "I've spent too long being judged. Maybe now things can be different." Samuel placed a hand over hers, a gesture of quiet support. "No matter what happens, Leela, you have proven something far greater than their judgment. You have proven that courage, kindness, and truth cannot be hidden. You have proven that heroes walk among us, often in unexpected forms." For the first time, Leela allowed herself a sense of peace. She had faced danger, risked her life, and stood tall in the face of fear. She had saved Samuel once again, and in doing so had begun to shift the hearts and minds of the very town that had branded her a devil. As they returned to the saloon, the wind carrying the faint smell of smoke, Leela realized something important. Bravery was not about being fearless. It was about acting despite fear, about choosing to do what is right even when the world judged her harshly. And in that truth she found strength, a strength that no whisper, no rumor, and no fear could ever take away. That night under the quiet stars, Leela and Samuel sat together, watching the town slowly return to its usual rhythm. But something had changed. The town had seen courage, had seen selflessness, and could no longer deny it. Leela, once only a saloon girl in the eyes of others, had become something more, a symbol of bravery and hope, a reminder that truth and kindness can shine through even the darkest night. The days after the fire at the church were quieter in Blackwater Creek, but they were not without change. The town slowly began to realize what they had witnessed that night, an act of courage so selfless, so fearless, that no rumor or fear could ever erase it. Leela had risked her life not once, but twice, to save Samuel, the preacher who had become her friend. And though some townsfolk still whispered in corners, the majority could no longer deny the truth. She was brave and she was good. Leela returned to the saloon, tending to her work with her usual diligence. The wooden boards creaked under her boots, the bar smelled of polished wood and the faint hint of whiskey, and the familiar routine brought a sense of normalcy she hadn't felt in months. But things had changed. The glances she received from townspeople were no longer filled solely with suspicion. They held respect. Some smiled politely, nodding as they passed by, acknowledging her courage in small, quiet ways. Samuel continued his work in town, helping those who needed guidance and sharing his sermons with anyone willing to listen. But he always made a point to stop by the Golden Spur, to speak with Leela and ensure she felt supported. Their bond had grown deeper since the fire, built on trust, shared experience, and mutual respect. The people of Blackwater Creek watched them with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. They could see the friendship, the loyalty, and the strength between the two, even if they didn't fully understand it. One afternoon, as the sun cast a warm, golden light over the streets, Leela was sweeping the floor of the saloon when a small group of children approached. They had been wary of her in the past, but today they came with hesitant smiles. "Miss Leela," one of them said softly, "thank you for saving the preacher. You're really brave." Leela knelt to their level, smiling gently. "Thank you, children. But remember, bravery isn't about fighting fires or facing danger. Bravery is about doing what's right, even when it's hard." The children nodded, their eyes shining with newfound understanding. For the first time, Leela realized that her actions were not only changing the opinions of adults, but also teaching the younger generation about courage, kindness, and integrity. Despite the growing respect, some townspeople remained skeptical. They remembered the old rumors and found it difficult to fully accept her. But Samuel, ever patient and wise, continued to stand by her side, reminding her that truth and kindness would eventually shine through even the darkest doubts. One evening, after the saloon had closed and the streets were quiet, Samuel and Leela walked together toward the hills outside town. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and purple, and the wind carried the scent of wildflowers and pine. It had become a ritual for them to take these walks, a time to reflect, share thoughts, and plan for the future. "You've done something remarkable, Leela," Samuel said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. "You've shown the town that courage and kindness cannot be ignored. You've proven that even in a world full of judgment, one person can make a difference." Leela looked at him, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. "I only did what I had to," she said softly. "I couldn't stand by while someone was in danger, that's all." Samuel shook his head gently. "That is exactly why it is remarkable. To act with such courage without expecting anything in return is the truest form of bravery. You've inspired everyone, even those who are too afraid to admit it." As they walked, the townspeople watched from a distance, some with softened hearts, others still unsure how to feel. But slowly, the whispers of doubt began to fade, replaced by stories of her courage and selflessness. The legend of the Saloon girl who saved the preacher's life and risked her own during the church fire began to spread beyond Blackwater Creek, reaching nearby towns and travelers who spoke of her bravery with awe. Leela found herself reflecting on her life, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. She had lived much of her life in fear of judgment and ridicule, but through her actions, she had discovered something far more valuable: the power of courage, the importance of integrity, and the strength that comes from standing firm in the face of fear. Over time, even the townspeople who had once doubted her began to show respect openly. The baker who had once refused to serve her without advance payment now greeted her with a smile. Children no longer ran from her but approached her with curiosity and admiration. People stopped whispering behind their hands and instead nodded with recognition when she passed by. Leela still felt the sting of those who judged, but their voices were no longer loud enough to drown out the truth of who she was. One afternoon, as Leela was closing the saloon, a traveling preacher arrived in town. He had heard stories of her bravery and courage and came to meet the woman who had captured the hearts of so many. When he spoke to her, he was struck by her humility and strength. "You are truly remarkable," he said gently. "Your courage has inspired more people than you can imagine. You have shown that a single act of bravery can change hearts and minds." Leela smiled softly, feeling a quiet pride. "I only did what I thought was right. But if it helps others, then I am glad." Samuel, standing beside her, placed a hand over hers. "You've done more than you realize, Leela. You've taught the town about courage, kindness, and the power of truth. And you've reminded us all that heroes are not always soldiers or leaders. They are ordinary people who act with extraordinary courage when it matters most." As days turned into months, Leela's reputation grew stronger. She was no longer just the saloon girl of Blackwater Creek. She was a symbol of courage, a reminder that actions speak louder than rumors, and that truth and kindness can outshine fear and judgment. People began to seek her advice, to share their troubles, and to look to her as a source of strength. The town, once quick to judge, slowly embraced her. Children learned from her example, adults softened their hearts, and even the most skeptical began to respect her. Leela realized that while she could not change everyone's opinion, she could influence those who were willing to see the truth. One evening, as she and Samuel sat together watching the sunset, she reflected on her journey. "I never thought my life could be like this," she said softly. "I always thought I would just survive day by day, but now I see that courage can change everything." Samuel nodded, his eyes filled with admiration. "Yes, Leela. Courage changes lives, sometimes quietly, sometimes boldly, and you have shown us all the meaning of true bravery." Leela smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. The town's whispers, the judgment, the fear, it no longer held power over her. She had faced danger, risked her life, and remained true to herself. And in doing so, she had left a mark on Blackwater Creek that would not be forgotten. Years later, people would still speak of her deeds. The night she saved Samuel from a gunman, the night she braved flames to rescue him from the burning church. Children would tell the story in hushed, awe-filled voices, and travelers would repeat the tale as they passed through town. Leela had become a legend, not because she sought fame or recognition, but because she acted with courage, kindness, and integrity when it mattered most. Even as she grew older, Leela remained in Blackwater Creek, continuing her work at the Golden Spur. She was no longer just a saloon girl. She was a hero, a symbol of hope, and a reminder that even in the face of judgment and fear, one person's courage can change the hearts of many. Samuel continued his work as a preacher, often speaking of mercy, understanding, and the importance of seeing people for who they truly are. He would tell the story of Leela's bravery, emphasizing that heroism can come from the most unexpected places. And every time he spoke, Leela would sit quietly, a small smile on her face, knowing that she had made a difference. The town, once quick to judge, had learned a valuable lesson. Courage, kindness, and truth cannot be hidden. They shine, even in the darkest moments, and those who act with integrity leave a legacy that cannot be erased. Leela had shown them all this truth, not through words but through actions. And so, life in Blackwater Creek continued, but it was forever changed. Leela's story lived on, inspiring generations to come. The saloon girl who had been branded a devil by gossip had become the hero the town needed, a reminder that bravery is not the absence of fear, but the choice to do what is right, even when the world doubts you. In the end, Leela understood something she had never known before, that her life, once defined by judgment and survival, could be defined instead by courage, kindness, and the hearts she had touched. And that was a legacy more powerful than any rumor, stronger than any fear, and brighter than any flame.